Napoleon. The Rise and Fall of an Empire, an epic tale. On a cold December day in 1804, the grand halls of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris were filled with anticipation. The world watched as Napoleon Bonaparte, the son of a modest Corsican family, placed the imperial crown upon his own head. It was a moment that defied tradition, a declaration that his destiny was not granted by divine right but seized by his own genius. He had risen from the chaos of revolution and war to become Emperor of the French, a ruler whose ambitions would shake the very foundations of Europe. But empires forged in fire often crumble in the same flames. Napoleon's reign would be one of glory and devastation, of breathtaking victories and tragic miscalculations. And so began a decade of war, one that would leave the continent scarred and forever changed. The road to Austerlitz. 8 months after his coronation, the drums of war echoed across Europe. Britain, Napoleon's fiercest enemy, stood defiant. Along the Channel coast, Napoleon assembled an army of 180,000 men, prepared to invade. Yet, the mighty Royal Navy blocked his path. Frustrated but never deterred, he turned his attention to another threat, the Third Coalition, a formidable alliance of Austria, Russia, Sweden, and Naples, forged by Britain's gold and diplomacy. Napoleon moved swiftly. His Grande Armée, organized into independent corps that could march and fight with unparalleled speed, struck with precision. In October 1805, he encircled the Austrian army at Ulm, forcing the surrender of 60,000 troops without a major battle. Vienna soon fell. But the decisive confrontation was yet to come. On December 2, 1805, the first anniversary of his coronation, Napoleon faced the combined Russian and Austrian forces at Austerlitz. Outnumbered but not outmatched, he devised a masterful trap. By appearing weak on his right flank, he lured the enemy forward, then unleashed a devastating counterattack, splitting their forces. By sunset, 10,000 enemy soldiers were captured, and the coalition was shattered. It was his greatest victory, the Battle of the Three Emperors, and it cemented his place as a military legend. The whale and the elephant. Yet, even as he dominated the battlefields of Europe, Napoleon faced an enemy he could not touch. Britain, the whale, ruled the seas, while Napoleon, the elephant, controlled the land. They were locked in a struggle neither could decisively win. At Trafalgar, the brilliant Admiral Nelson destroyed the French and Spanish fleets, ensuring Britain's naval supremacy for a century. Determined to break Britain's economic strength, Napoleon imposed the continental system, a trade blockade designed to starve Britain of resources. But enforcing it would lead him into his next great mistake, Spain. The Spanish uprising in the Peninsular War in 1808, Napoleon placed his brother Joseph Bonaparte on the Spanish throne, igniting a firestorm of resistance. The Spanish people refused to be ruled by a foreign emperor. The Dos de Mayo uprising in Madrid was only the beginning of a brutal guerrilla war that would bleed France for years. British forces, led by Sir Arthur Wellesley, the future Duke of Wellington, landed in Portugal, turning the conflict into a grinding war of attrition. For the first time, Napoleon's army faced not only an organized enemy but an entire population in revolt. Every village, every road, every mountain pass became a battlefield. The war in Spain drained Napoleon's resources and morale, a slow, relentless bleeding of the empire. The Austrian challenge and the Battle of Wagram. Sensing weakness, Austria launched another war in 1809. The Battle of Wagram, the largest European battle to date, saw Napoleon victorious but at a terrible cost. Over 40,000 soldiers lay dead or wounded. Though he forced Austria into submission, the strain on his empire was growing. The invincible Grande Armée was no longer invincible. Still, Napoleon's ambition knew no bounds. In 1812, he made his fateful decision to invade Russia. The Russian catastrophe. With an army of 600,000 men, Napoleon marched into Russia, convinced that another decisive victory would bring the Tsar to his knees. But Russia did not fight as his other enemies had. They retreated, burning their own lands behind them, denying Napoleon's army food and shelter. At Borodino, the bloodiest single-day battle of the war, Napoleon claimed a costly victory, but the Russians did not surrender. Instead, they abandoned Moscow, setting it ablaze. Napoleon entered the ruined city, realizing too late that he had won nothing. The Russian winter arrived, and with it, the nightmare of his retreat began. As the Grande Armée staggered back, harassed by Russian forces and frozen by temperatures far below freezing, it collapsed. More than 400,000 men were lost. It was a disaster from which Napoleon would never recover. The fall of an emperor. Sensing blood, Prussia, Austria, Russia, and Britain united once more. In 1813, at the Battle of Leipzig, Napoleon's army was crushed. The following year, the coalition marched into Paris. Napoleon abdicated and was exiled to Elba. But the story was not yet over. In 1815, he escaped, returning to France in triumph for one last stand, the 100 Days. His final gamble ended at Waterloo, where the Duke of Wellington and Prussian forces shattered his dreams forever. Napoleon was exiled to St. Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic. There, he spent his final years reflecting on his rise and fall, his triumphs and mistakes. Legacy of an empire. Though defeated, Napoleon changed Europe forever. His legal and administrative reforms, the Napoleonic Code, still influence nations today. His wars redrew borders and spread revolutionary ideals across the continent. As he once admitted, "I embarked pretty badly on this affair. The whole of it remains very ugly." His empire, built through conquest, collapsed under the weight of its own ambition. Yet, Napoleon's story endures. The Corsican artillery officer who became Emperor of the French remains one of history's most fascinating and complex figures, a warrior, a strategist, a visionary, and a man consumed by the very ambition that had made him great.